Step out of the assisted medical screening lane. Now.
Officer Grant Keller's voice cut through Charlotte Douglas Airport. Naomi Carter held up her medical assistance pass.
My brother is waiting for surgery. I'm his medical proxy.
Keller looked at her face before looking at the pass.
People like you will always have a story.
He let it fall to the floor, then drove his leg into hers. Naomi staggered but stayed standing. Keller grabbed her wrist. She turned, blocked, and he crashed onto the tile.
She attacked me!
He screamed. Naomi raised both hands. Keller thought he had created a suspect. He had no idea he had exposed the lie that could destroy him. To understand why Grant Keller chose that exact lane, we need to go back 12 minutes before Naomi Carter reached the checkpoint. Doctor. Naomi Carter stood in the assisted medical screening lane, with her navy coat buttoned to the throat, one hand wrapped around a folder of hospital records, the other holding a bent boarding pass to Minneapolis. The line smelled of wet wool, coffee, metal luggage handles, and the nervous patience of people trying not to miss something important. Naomi kept checking the departure board, then her phone. 3 messages from her mother sat on the screen. Elijah is asking if you are close. Surgeon is waiting. Please call when you board. Naomi swallowed and looked at the departure board. Gate B-17 was still boarding, but the final call could come any minute. She had to make it. Her brother was 19, too proud to admit when he was scared, too thin in the hospital photo her mother had sent that morning, and too unstable from medication and pressure changes to give clear consent on his own. At the edge of the lane, Officer Grant Keller watched her without pretending not to. He had the cold look of a man who had judged her before hearing a word. Behind him, half hidden near an employee door, Deputy Chief Warren Pike touched the earpiece at his collar and spoke quietly. The courier crosses in 2 minutes. Clear the assisted lane. Keller's mouth tightened. There's a woman holding it up. Pike did not raise his voice. He did not need to. Then give her a reason to leave. Keller stepped into the lane and stopped in front of Naomi. Mom, step out of line. Naomi looked up, calm because panic would waste breath. Sir, I have a medical assistance pass. My brother is in critical condition at Riverbend Medical Center. I'm expected in Minneapolis tonight. Keller held out his hand. Pass. She gave it to him. He looked at it for less than a second, as if reading it might weaken the story he wanted to tell. This lane is for verified needs. It is verified. People say that all day. Naomi felt the words land where they were meant to land. Not on the paper, on her face, on her skin, on the quiet assumption that she was taking something that did not belong to her. The hospital number is on the form, she said. You can call them. Keller let the pass slip from his fingers. It struck the polished floor and skidded near the rope barrier. A woman behind Naomi gasped softly. Naomi looked at the pass, then back at him. Pick it up and step aside, Keller said. Naomi bent just enough to reach for it. That was when Keller shifted into her space, his knee and boot driving hard against the side of her leg. Some people only saw her body jolt. Naomi felt the intent, her breath caught. Her training answered before her anger did. She dropped her weight, planted her heel, tightened her core, and let the force slide through her stance instead of knocking her down. For a second, the airport went strangely quiet. Keller stared at her, surprised. Then surprise became humiliation, and humiliation became something meaner. Do not resist me, he snapped. Reaching for her wrist, Naomi saw his hand coming. She did not strike first. Her father's voice moved through her mind like it had never left. Stand firm. Never start it. Protect what breathes. Keller grabbed for her arm. Naomi stepped back half a pace, turned her hip, raised her forearm in a short karate block, and redirected his grip away from her body. Keller had already committed his weight forward. When Naomi turned out of the grip, His own momentum carried him past her. His shoe slid on the damp tile and he went down hard. Naomi stepped back immediately and raised both hands. "I am not resisting," she said, voice shaking but clear. "He touched me first. My brother needs surgery." Phones lifted around them. Keller rolled onto his side and grabbed at his neck. "She attacked me," he groaned, louder than pain required. "She's trained. She came at me." Naomi stared at him, stunned by how fast a lie could put on a uniform. Deputy Chief Pike emerged from the employee door with measured steps, his face already arranged into official concern. "Everyone step back. Active security matter." Near the rope line, Owen Fletcher kept recording, his phone steady despite the fear in his eyes. Beside a janitorial cart, Teresa Molina stood frozen with a black trash liner in her hands. She had seen Keller push first. She had seen Pike watching. And now, through the employee door Pike had come from, she saw a man in a dark airport jacket pull a charcoal gray titanium suitcase past the scanner without stopping. Naomi did not see it. 2 officers were already taking her arms. "Please," she said as her phone began ringing inside her coat. "That's the hospital. I have to answer." No one answered her. The gray security door opened. The departure screen still said Minneapolis. Elijah was still waiting, and the first piece of truth was already being carried away in a stranger's phone. The room behind the gray security door felt colder than the terminal. Naomi Carter sat across from a bolted metal table, her navy coat folded over one arm. Her hospital folder held flat beneath both hands. A camera watched from the upper corner. Its red light blinked once every few seconds, small and patient, like an eye that had already chosen what it wanted to remember. Naomi knew rooms like this did not need to shout to be dangerous. They only needed paper, silence, and people willing to turn fear into a sentence. If she trembled, they could call her unstable. If she spoke too firmly, they could call her aggressive. If she said nothing, they could write that she refused to cooperate. So she placed her palms where they could see them, and made her voice the same voice she used in the emergency department when a family needed truth without panic. "My name is Dr. Naomi Carter. My brother Elijah Carter is at Riverbend Medical Center in Minneapolis. His surgical team is waiting for me. I need to return their call." Officer Evan Doyle stood near the door, with a clipboard held too tightly against his chest. He was younger than Keller, with nervous eyes and the look of a man who had not yet learned how much damage could be done by simply following along. Beside the table, Officer Marcy Trent opened a folder that had nothing in it yet. "You can explain that in your statement." Naomi looked at the empty folder. "I am explaining it now." Trent clicked her pen. "Lower your voice." Naomi stopped. She had not raised it. That was the trap. She drew one slow breath and looked down at the folder beneath her hands. Elijah's latest scans were inside, his blood markers, his medication history. The handwritten note from the Minneapolis surgeon asking her to be available as soon as she landed. Outside the room, the airport kept moving. Announcements bled through the wall in soft pieces, cities being called like doors opening for everyone else. In the terminal, Grant Keller sat in a wheelchair near the edge of the checkpoint with a white neck brace around his throat. Deputy Chief Warren Pike stood beside him, one hand resting on the back of the chair, his face arranged for sympathy. Keller's voice carried just enough for people to hear. "I was trying to keep that lane safe," he said to a local reporter holding a small camera. "She came at me before I could even react. I never expected a doctor to know moves like that." A woman near the rope barrier, gray-haired and shaking with anger, pointed toward the assisted medical screening lane. "That is not what happened." He pushed into her first. Pike turned to her with a polished smile. "Mom, we'll have an officer take your statement." No one came. 10 feet away, Owen Fletcher watched an airport security supervisor carry his phone through a staff-only door. "I need a receipt for that device," Owen said. "It has evidence on it." The supervisor did not slow down. Another officer stepped in front of Owen. "Sir, the device is being held for security review. You'll be contacted." Owen looked at the door, then at his empty hand. He had trusted backup systems for most of his adult life. At that moment, he hoped one had trusted him back. In the holding room, Naomi's phone began vibrating inside her coat pocket. The sound was small, but it filled the room. Doyle looked at the coat. Trent reached it first. She pulled the phone free, glanced at the screen, and for 1 second Naomi saw the name, Mom. Beneath it, the hospital number flashed on the missed call line. Trent silenced it and placed the phone face down on the table. Something in Naomi's body went still. Not calm, still. "You have no right to do that." Trent picked up her pen again. "Statement begins now." Naomi stared at the dark back of the phone. "You are not delaying paperwork. You are delaying a life." Doyle's eyes flicked toward her, then away. Trent began asking questions that had nothing to do with Elijah. How long had Naomi trained in karate? Had she ever competed? Did she consider her body a weapon? Why had she reacted so quickly if she was not preparing? Fight? Naomi answered carefully, but each question showed her the shape of the report they wanted. They were not trying to understand the moment. They were trying to turn discipline into intent. They were trying to make her years of control sound like danger. The phone vibrated again. Trent ignored it. Naomi watched it move slightly against the metal tabletop, a trapped thing trying to reach her. By the time they allowed her one call, the flight to Minneapolis had left the gate. Lorraine answered from the hospital, and before Naomi could speak, her mother said, "Baby, where are you?" Naomi closed her eyes. "I'm still in Charlotte." The silence that followed was worse than crying. Then Lorraine said softer, "The surgeon came by. They asked if you can join by video." Elijah woke up for a little while. "He asked if you were almost here." Naomi pressed her fingers into the edge of the table until they hurt. "Tell him I'm trying." Lorraine did not blame her. That made it harder. In the hall outside, Keller's story was already finding cameras, faces, and headlines. Inside the room, Naomi listened to her mother breathe through tears. Knowing her brother's body, did not care about reports, procedures, or lies told in a clean uniform. Morning came without mercy. The rain had stopped outside Charlotte Douglas, but the windows still held a gray film of water, and the airport lights looked pale against it. Naomi Carter walked out of the processing office with her coat over one arm, her hospital folder pressed to her ribs, and a packet of papers she had not been allowed to refuse. The papers said she had been released pending review, had to remain available to authorities, could not contact Officer Grant Keller, and could not leave North Carolina without permission. None of them said what to do when a brother's surgery could not wait. Officer Evan Doyle handed her the final page and avoided her eyes. "You'll be contacted about next steps." Naomi looked at him for a moment, long enough for him to feel the weight of what he was not saying. "My next step was supposed to be Minneapolis." He swallowed. "I'm sorry." She almost asked him what good that was, then decided not to spend her strength on a man still choosing the safest version of himself. Across the room, a television mounted above a vending machine showed Grant Keller in a wheelchair outside the terminal entrance. The white neck brace looked almost theatrical under the news camera light. Deputy Chief Warren Pike stood behind him, face grave, one hand on the wheelchair handle like a guardian of public order. Keller lowered his eyes and spoke in a strained voice. "I was trying to keep travelers safe." She was trained. "I didn't have time to defend myself." The headline beneath him read, Security officer injured in airport confrontation with martial arts trained doctor. Naomi stood very still. There was her life, reduced to a phrase chosen by people who had never asked why she was in that line. Emergency physician became trained doctor. Medical assistance pass became confrontation. Self-control became violence. A black woman trying to reach a hospital became a threat before anyone bothered to read the page in her hand. She felt the old, familiar pressure of being asked to prove not only what happened, but who she was allowed to be while explaining it. Too calm, and they would call her cold. Too angry, and they would call her dangerous. Too hurt, and they would call her unstable. The story had already been placed around her like a coat that did not belong to her. "Dr. Carter," a man said behind her. Naomi turned. Malcolm Reeves stood beside a row of plastic chairs, charcoal overcoat buttoned, leather briefcase worn at the corners. He had silver at his temples and the steady eyes of someone who did not confuse urgency with panic. "Your mother called me at 4:16 this morning." Naomi blinked. "My mother knows you. Your father did." That landed softly but deep. Naomi remembered her father's hands tightening her karate belt when she was 13, telling her that discipline meant nothing if it disappeared when people lied about you. Malcolm did not offer a speech. He asked 3 questions. "Did Keller make contact first?" "Yes." "After he fell, did you move toward him?" "No. I stepped back and raised my hands." "Before he approached, did you notice anything unusual about the lane?" Naomi looked past him, toward the corridor she had been pulled through. It was too empty. He kept looking behind me, toward the employee door. Pike was there before anyone acted like he was in charge. Malcolm's expression sharpened, not with surprise, but recognition. "Then this is larger than Keller." He drove her to Matthews because reporters had already found her apartment. Mrs. Irene Whitaker opened the door before they reached the porch, a small woman in a gray sweater with eyes that missed nothing. She looked at Naomi's tired face, then at the television glowing in the living room, where Keller's interview had begun again. Mrs. Whitaker picked up the remote and shut it off. "Not in my house," she said. "A lie does not get a chair at my table." Naomi sat in the kitchen, where soup warmed on the stove and the clock ticked with unbearable ordinary rhythm. Her phone rang. It was the hospital where she worked. The administrator's voice was careful, polished, frightened. They were aware of the incident. They were cooperating with lawful review. They valued safety. They hoped for a fair process. Neutral words. Clean words that stood far enough away from her not to get stained. When the call ended, messages began appearing from numbers she did not know. Some said they believed her. More did not. Then someone sent an old photo from a karate tournament when she was 22, frozen mid-block, focused and strong. The caption read, "Doctor by title, weapon by training." Naomi pushed the phone away as if it had burned her. Malcolm turned it face down. Strangers do not get to define evidence. Before Naomi could answer, his phone rang. Owen Fletcher. Malcolm put him on speaker. Owen's voice was tight and sleepless. "The cloud copy is gone. Someone logged in after they took my phone, deleted the video, and cleared recovery." Naomi's hand closed around the edge of the table. "So it's gone?" A pause. "The video is. Maybe not every trace." Systems leave shadows. Outside, the morning light brightened a little, but nothing in the room felt brighter. Owen Fletcher had never believed memory was enough. It bent under pressure, lost edges, and made frightened people question what they had seen. Systems were different. They stamped time, stored fragments, and forgot to clean under the furniture. That was what Owen told himself as he sat in his apartment in Durham with 2 laptops open, 3 external drives lined beside a dead cup of coffee, and his hands still shaking from the way the airport supervisor had taken his phone. He should have been in Phoenix by then, sitting in a conference room under bad fluorescent lights, explaining network risk to people who pretended to understand it. Instead, a doctor he had never met was being turned into a threat on television, and the only clean record of what really happened had been pulled from his hand by the same system now telling the story. He started the screen recorder before touching anything. "Time is 12:46 a.m., he said, voice flat because anger needed a job or it became useless. Reviewing cloud account activity after device seizure at Charlotte Douglas. He checked the video folder first, though he already knew the answer. Empty. Recently deleted. Empty. Recovery. Empty. Then he opened account activity. There it was, ugly in its precision. A login from an unfamiliar device appeared minutes after security had taken the phone, while the recording app was still open and his cloud session had not yet locked. File accessed, file deleted, recovery cleared, no curiosity, no messy thief. Whoever entered had gone straight to the newest video and removed it like they had been given one instruction and no conscience. Owen sat back. The refrigerator hummed in the next room. A car passed outside on wet pavement. For a moment, the apartment felt too ordinary for the size of the violation. Then he leaned forward and kept going. Browser cache, sync history, local thumbnails, device index, temporary caption data from the live caption feature he kept enabled for work calls. He moved slowly, narrating each step so no one could later say he had invented a miracle after midnight. At 1:28, he found the file name. At 1:39, the size, large enough for a video, not a photo. At 1:51, a thumbnail surfaced so small it looked like a stain until he enlarged it. Owen stopped breathing. The image was blurred, gray around the edges, but there was Naomi Carter near the rope line. Her weight dropped low, and Officer Grant Keller's body pressed into her space before she redirected him. It was not enough to end the case, but it was enough to prove the video had existed. Enough to prove Keller's version began too late. Owen kept searching. The phone's live caption feature had left behind a broken audio-text fragment, a handful of words without context, most of it useless. Then two phrases appeared close together. "Move her now" and "Courier Crossing." Owen read them again, feeling the room narrow around him. This was not just about a man lying because he had fallen in public. Someone had needed Naomi moved before something passed behind her. Across Charlotte, in a windowless operations room near the service corridors, Deputy Chief Warren Pike stood beside a technician who would not meet his eyes. "The cloud copy is gone," Pike asked. "The file and recovery folder, yes. That wasn't my question." The technician swallowed. "There could be cached artifacts on synced devices. Depends on how careful he is." Pike's face did not change. "Find out." In the corner, Grant Keller sat without the white neck brace. It rested on the table beside a bottle of water. Without cameras, his injury had lost its discipline. "This is getting too big," he muttered. Pike turned slowly. "It got big because you let her stay on her feet." Keller's jaw tightened. "You told me to clear the lane. I told you to solve a problem. You created witnesses." Keller looked toward the monitors. One camera showed Teresa Molina pushing her janitorial cart past the employee door, head lowered, pace steady. "What about the cleaning woman?" Pike watched her disappear from the frame. People like her survive by knowing when not to repeat what they hear. And if she does, Pike's voice stayed soft. Then people will be reminded she is unreliable. Back in Durham, Owen packaged the metadata, the thumbnail, the deletion logs, and the broken caption fragment into an encrypted archive. He sent it through the secure link Malcolm Reeves had provided, then called him. Malcolm answered before the second ring. "Tell me." Owen rubbed both eyes with one hand. "The full video is gone, but I found proof it existed. proof it was deleted after they took my phone, and a thumbnail showing Keller making contact before she reacted. Can you testify to that? Yes, but there's more. Temporary caption data caught 2 phrases. Move her now. Courier crossing. Silence held the line for a beat. Then Malcolm said, that explains the lane. Owen looked at the frozen thumbnail on his screen, at the small blurred shape of Naomi, standing where someone had decided she should not stand. It explains why they needed her gone, he said, but it doesn't prove what crossed. Malcolm's voice hardened. Then we find the person who saw it. By evening, the rain had softened into a cold mist over Pineville, the kind that blurred streetlights and made every storefront window look distant. Naomi Carter parked outside Park Family Karate and sat in the car longer than she meant to. The sign above the door was faded at the edges. She had first walked under it when she was 13, carrying a borrowed gym bag and too much fear in her shoulders. Now she sat there at 32 with her name on the news, her brother fighting for time in Minneapolis, and half the country being invited to believe that the discipline that had raised her had made her dangerous. She was not there to train. She needed one place where karate still meant discipline, not danger. The bell above the door gave a tired chime when she stepped inside. The mats were empty. The mirrors held a dim reflection of her navy coat, her drawn face, the hospital folder tucked under her arm like something she could protect by holding it tighter. On the far wall, the old black lettering still read, "Discipline before power." Master Han Park came from the office without surprise, as if he had been expecting her since the first news report. He was 64, lean, silver-haired, and moved with the quiet economy of someone who had never wasted motion just to prove he still had it. "Naomi," he said. No pity, no shock. Just her name returned to her without accusation. That nearly broke her. Master Park. He opened his arms and she stepped into the embrace stiffly at first, then with the sudden exhaustion of someone who had been standing too long in rooms designed to make her feel small. When he let go, he studied her face. "Show me." She knew what he meant. Naomi removed her shoes and walked onto the mat in her socks. Her body remembered the floor before her mind settled. She stood where the assisted medical screening lane had been in her memory. "He stepped into me here," she said. "He used his leg first. I dropped my weight." She moved slowly, replaying the airport without the noise, without the phones, without Keller's voice already sharpening into a lie. Then he grabbed for my wrist. I stepped back. Short block, hip turn, redirected the pull. She finished the motion and stopped with both hands open. Master Park watched once, and once was enough. "You could have broken his arm if you wanted." Naomi swallowed. "I know. You could have driven him into the floor." "I know, you did not." Her eyes burned. She looked toward the wall, because looking at him would make the words come too fast. "Then why does it feel like I'm the one on trial for being alive in my own body?" The question hung in the dojo. Rain tapped against the front glass. Naomi laughed once, but there was no humor in it. "He touched me first. I stayed standing. I stepped back. I raised my hands. And somehow they turned that into proof that I'm violent. They don't see a doctor. They don't see a sister trying to reach a hospital. They see a black woman who knows how not to fall, and they decide that must mean threat. Master Park did not rush to soften it. That was one of the reasons she trusted him. He sat on the bench and folded his hands. "They are not afraid of your karate," he said. "They are afraid that you did not form the part they prepared for you. They wanted you down. You stayed up. They wanted panic. You gave them control. They wanted a lie with your shape in it. You remained yourself." Naomi pressed her lips together, but the tears came anyway, quiet and furious. Master Park went into his office and returned with a folded strip of dark cloth. Your father left this here after your last tournament. Naomi stared at it. Her hands were not steady when she opened it. Inside, in her father's careful handwriting, were the words, "Stand firm, strike never first, protect what breathes." For a moment, the dojo disappeared. She was 13 again, her father tightening her belt, telling her that strength without mercy was only another kind of fear. Her phone rang. Minneapolis. Naomi answered before the second vibration. The surgeon's voice was calm, but every word carried weight. Elijah's condition had worsened. The team needed Naomi's decision within the next day. In the background, she heard a weak cough, and then her mother murmuring something too soft to catch. Naomi closed her eyes, forced the doctor in her to stand beside the sister in her, and ask the questions that mattered. When the call ended, she stayed very still. Master Park said nothing. Naomi wrapped the cloth around her wrist and called Malcolm Reeves. He answered with no greeting. "Naomi, I won't take a deal that says I attacked him." Her voice was low, scraped clean. "And I need you to get me permission to fly to Minneapolis. I'm working on both." "Work faster." A pause. Then Malcolm said, "I will." Naomi looked at her father's words on the cloth. "Stand firm. Strike never first. Protect what breathes." For the first time since the airport, her silence did not feel like something they had taken from her. It felt like something she was choosing where to place. Teresa Molina sat in her old Toyota behind a closed pharmacy 2 miles from Charlotte Douglas, both hands resting on the steering wheel, though the engine had been off for nearly 20 minutes. The sign above the drive-through window flickered between red and darkness. Rainwater gathered in shallow cracks across the asphalt. Every few seconds, she checked the rearview mirror, not because she had seen anyone follow her, but because fear had a way of inventing headlights when a person was carrying something heavier than proof. Her phone lay on the passenger seat, with Malcolm Reeves's office number still glowing on the screen. She had called twice, hung up twice. Each time the ringing began, she saw Naomi Carter again, standing in the assisted medical screening lane with her hands raised, asking for the hospital call while men with badges rebuilt the truth around her. Teresa had cleaned floors in that airport for 13 years. She knew the difference between a busy checkpoint and a cleared one. She knew when officers were working and when they were performing. She knew how people looked through her orange vest, through her gray cart, through the cracked skin on her hands, as if the person emptying the trash had no eyes, no memory, no name worth writing down. That invisibility had paid bills. It had protected her. It had also made her ashamed. On the third call, she let it ring. When the receptionist answered, Teresa closed her eyes. "Tell Mr. Reeves the woman from the airport is ready to talk." Not at his office. Malcolm arrived alone, just as she had demanded. He parked under the broken security light and stepped out slowly, hands visible. No assistant, no investigator, no rush. That mattered to Teresa more than he knew. Malcolm stood still and let her choose whether to cross the wet asphalt. "Miss Molina?" he asked. "Depends who's asking." "Malcolm Reeves. I know who you are." "Then you know I'm here to listen." She almost laughed. People say that right before they decide what parts they can use. His face did not harden. "Then tell me only what you are ready to tell me." Teresa looked toward the road, then back at him. That lane was cleared before Dr. Carter got there. Malcolm did not reach for his notebook yet. How long? About 8 minutes, maybe 9. Long enough that a man in a wheelchair was moved to regular screening even though he had medical papers. Long enough that 2 passengers with assistance tags got redirected. They said equipment check. There was no equipment check. Malcolm's eyes sharpened. Who ordered it? Keller was standing there waiting. Pike was at the service door. He kept looking at his watch. Now Malcolm took out the notebook. Teresa pulled her jacket tighter. And the suitcase? Charcoal gray, titanium shell. Man pulling it wore an airport jacket, but his name tag was covered. It had a medical courier seal on the handle. You saw the seal? I saw the wrong color. Malcolm looked up. Wrong how? My husband worked supply intake at a hospital warehouse for years. Real medical specimen tags follow color rules. That one was close enough for people who don't know. Not close enough for someone who had heard hospital inventory stories for 20 years. She hated that her voice softened at the mention of her husband, so she made it hard again. That suitcase went through the service door while everybody watched Keller on the floor. Malcolm wrote quietly. Was this the first time? Teresa shook her head. No, I've seen cases like that for months, not every week, often enough. A lane gets cleared. A camera gets checked. A passenger gets made into a problem. Then a courier passes where regular people don't get to look. A train moved somewhere in the distance, low and metallic. Teresa waited for Malcolm to tell her. She needed to testify tomorrow, needed to sign something now, needed to trust a system that had never bothered learning her last name. Instead, he asked, "Why speak tonight?" Teresa looked at her hands. Cleaners had made the knuckles rough, and winter had split the skin near one thumb. Because she kept asking for the hospital. Her throat tightened, but she did not let it break. Years ago, my younger sister stopped breathing right in my kitchen. I drove her to emergency care with one hand on the wheel and one hand against her chest, just to feel if air was still moving. If somebody had blocked that door and told me to calm down, I don't know what part of me would have survived it. Malcolm lowered his pen. Teresa reached into her purse and handed him a folded maintenance notice. Camera S12 points at that service door. They moved maintenance up. 30 hours, maybe less. Once they wipe it, the suitcase becomes a rumor, and Dr. Carter stays the story they made for her. Malcolm unfolded the paper under the broken light. Can you get access? Teresa gave him a tired look. I clean the places people forget they gave me keys to. Mrs. Molina, I do not want you risking yourself without protection. Mr. Reeves, I have been risking myself quietly since the day I learned invisible people still get blamed when powerful people make a mess. She turned toward her car. You get ready to use what I bring. I'll decide what I can carry. Malcolm looked at the maintenance notice again, and for the first time that night, Teresa saw real fear cross his face, not for himself, for the time they did not have. Teresa Molina began her night shift at 10 with the same gray cart, the same rubber gloves, and the same tired walk that had carried her through 13 years of polished floors and people who rarely said thank you. That was important. If fear changed her pace, someone would notice. If courage made her look too focused, someone would notice that too. So she emptied trash near gate C9, wiped rain streaks from the glass doors, picked up a crushed coffee cup under a row of seats, and gave directions to a man looking for baggage claim. She did not touch the small USB drive wrapped inside a dry cleaning cloth in her jacket pocket. She did not look toward camera S12. She did not look at the service door where the charcoal gray suitcase had vanished, while Naomi Carter was being dragged away. Around midnight, the airport changed its face. The bright public noise thinned. Travelers slept across chairs with backpacks under their heads. Gate agents spoke softer. Cleaning crews became visible only because there were fewer people left to ignore them. Teresa pushed her cart toward the service corridor, counting ordinary things to keep her breathing even. 6 trash liners left, 1 cracked wheel on the cart, 3 vending machines humming near the break room. She was almost at the employee door when Deputy Chief Warren Pike stepped out, as if the building itself had placed him there. "Teresa," he said, friendly enough for a hallway camera. She stopped, one hand on the cart handle. "Evening, Deputy Chief." Pike smiled. His suit jacket was gone now. Sleeves neat, badge clipped low at his belt. "You're working late. That's usually when people make the most mess." 13 years, right? She felt her stomach tighten. "About that. Good benefits after that kind of time. Pension matters. Health coverage matters." His eyes stayed on her face. "Family matters, too." "Your daughter still at community college?" Teresa kept her expression empty. He had not shouted. He had not threatened. That made it worse. He was placing her life on the table piece by piece, showing her how easily he could touch it. "She's doing fine. Good. Smart woman like you knows when something has nothing to do with her." Teresa looked down at the mop bucket. "I'm just here to clean floors." Pike's smile barely moved. "That's what I like about you." He walked away through the service door. Teresa waited until it closed. Only then did she let her fingers loosen around the cart handle. She was afraid. She admitted that to herself with no shame. Fear was not the problem. Letting it make the decision was. At 3:20 a.m., Teresa rolled the cart to the narrow hallway marked Mechanical Systems Support. The auxiliary server room sat behind a beige door. Most employees passed without thinking about it. Her badge should not have opened it anymore. It did. The little green light blinked and the lock clicked. "Thank you," she whispered, though she was not sure whether she was thanking God, old paperwork, or somebody's laziness. The room was cold and loud with fans. Rows of servers blinked green and amber in the dark. Teresa moved to the maintenance workstation in the corner. She was not Owen Fletcher. She did not understand networks. But years in the airport had taught her which menus technicians used when they thought no one was watching. She pulled off one glove with her teeth, inserted the USB, and found the workstation still sitting in an active maintenance session. The same careless habit she had seen technicians leave behind during overnight repairs. She selected camera S12, chose yesterday afternoon, set the range from 15 minutes before the incident to 25 minutes after, included the corridor audio track, and clicked export. The progress bar appeared. Teresa stared at the door. At 42%, voices stopped outside. 2 technicians. One of them laughed nervously. "Pike wants S12, S18, and the West Service door footage cleared before morning." The other said, "Why not wipe it now? Maintenance window covers the logs better." Teresa held her breath until the footsteps moved on. 61%, 74. Then the door handle turned. She grabbed the mop and looked up as a maintenance worker stepped in with a lunch bag in one hand. "What are you doing in here?" Teresa did not glance at the screen. Water stain under the vent. Supervisor said, "Check it before maintenance starts." He frowned. "In the server room? You want to call him? Because if I miss it, he writes me up. If you stop me, maybe he writes you up too." "I'm too tired for both." Working people understood the fear of being blamed for something small. He looked at the floor, saw nothing, and shrugged. "Don't touch anything. I clean around important things every night," she said. "That's the job." He left. The door closed. Export complete. Teresa stood frozen for 1 second, then ejected the drive properly, because a young technician had once warned her never to yank a file out of a machine. She slid the USB into a sealed pack of dry cloths beneath the cart's bottom shelf, logged out, wiped the keyboard, and left the room with the same slow, aching walk she had entered with. At 3:58, her cart passed under camera S12 for the last time before maintenance. She did not look up. At 4:07, Malcolm Reeves's phone buzzed in Mrs. Whitaker's kitchen. He read the message once, then again. "I have it." But he knows someone copied something. Naomi, sitting across the table with her father's cloth around her wrist, saw Malcolm's face change. "Teresa?" she asked. Malcolm nodded. Naomi closed her eyes. The truth had survived the night, but the woman carrying it was still inside the building that wanted it gone. Rain darkened the steps of the Mecklenburg County Courthouse until the stone looked almost black. Naomi Carter saw the crowd before she saw the doors. On one side stood people in stiff jackets holding signs for Officer Grant Keller, their faces set with the certainty television can give a stranger. On the other side stood people who had come without signs, older women in church coats, workers still wearing badges from early shifts, men standing with hands folded low, all quiet in the way people get when they have seen a familiar pattern return with a new name. They did not know Naomi, not really, but some of them knew what it meant when a black woman's fear was renamed aggression before anyone asked what had happened first. Naomi sat in Malcolm Reeves's car, wearing a charcoal blazer that used to make her feel professional. That morning it felt like armor made of paper. Her phone was in her lap, face up, waiting for Minneapolis. Malcolm turned off the engine but kept both hands on the wheel for a moment. "We are not winning everything today," he said. Naomi looked at him. "That is a terrible opening. It is an honest one. Today we break their version. We ask for travel. We do not give them your face, your anger, or your exhaustion to use as evidence." She nodded, though exhaustion had already found its way into her bones. Inside, reporters threw questions like objects. Did she regret using karate? Did she think Keller deserved an apology? Was she trained to disable people? Malcolm moved half a step ahead of her. No comment. Naomi kept walking. She felt every camera searching for the wrong expression. Too calm would look cold. Too hurt would look guilty. Too strong would look threatening. The courtroom smelled of damp coats, old wood, and coffee burned too long. Keller arrived in a wheelchair, with the white neck brace back around his throat. A few people murmured sympathy. Naomi looked down before her face could betray the sharp heat rising in her chest. Deputy Chief Warren Pike sat behind the prosecutor, still as a man listening to a story he had already edited. Prosecutor Julia Voss stood first. Her voice was clean, practiced, almost sorrowful. She described Naomi as an emergency physician with advanced karate training, a woman capable of turning her body into a weapon in a sensitive airport security area. Malcolm rose slowly. The state begins this story with Officer Keller on the floor because that is where the lie becomes useful. The truth begins earlier, when he stepped into Dr. Carter's space, ignored her medical documents, and used force first. The judge allowed limited argument. Then the state called a defensive tactics consultant named Howard Lyle. He wore a dark suit and spoke with the confidence of a man paid to make uncertainty sound technical. He explained that Naomi's motion showed training, balance, and the ability to cause serious harm if applied with intent. Malcolm waited, then approached. "Mr. Lyle, did you review footage showing what happened before Dr. Carter moved?" "I reviewed the segment provided. That was not my question." Lyle shifted. "No, I did not see earlier footage. So you did not see Officer Keller make contact first. I am aware that is alleged. You did not see Dr. Carter step back afterward and raise both hands. My analysis concerns the mechanics." Malcolm paused long enough for the room to feel it. If you remove the moment a man uses force first, you are not analyzing self-defense. You are decorating a lie. A low murmur moved through the gallery before the judge warned the room. It was not enough. The court did not dismiss the matter. Naomi would be allowed to join medical conferences by video, but travel to Minneapolis required further review. Further review. The words landed harder than a denial, because they pretended time was neutral. Elijah's body did not run on court calendars. Outside the courtroom, Julia Voss asked to speak privately. In a small conference room, she offered resolution. If Naomi accepted a minor disorderly conduct finding connected to the security disruption, the state would not oppose immediate travel that afternoon. If she refused, review could take longer. Naomi heard the trap click shut. Sign the lie, reach Elijah sooner. Refuse and keep waiting while her brother waited too. Her phone buzzed. A voicemail from Elijah. His voice was weak, trying to be light. Don't let them make you smaller. Naomi. She sat with the phone in her hand for a long time. Then she looked at Malcolm. No deal. Her voice trembled once, then steadied. I will not put my name under their story. By the time the S-12 file reached Malcolm Reeves, the morning had the thin gray color of a day that had not decided whether to break open or hold its breath. Owen Fletcher arrived at Mrs. Whitaker's kitchen with a laptop bag over one shoulder and eyes that looked older than they had 2 nights before. Teresa Molina came through the back door 10 minutes later, still in her work shoes, the cuffs damp from the airport floor, her face carefully blank until Naomi stood from the table. For a second, neither woman spoke. Naomi wanted to thank her, but the words felt too small beside the risk Teresa had carried in a cleaning cart. Teresa only nodded once and said, "Let's see if the machine remembered what people tried to forget." Owen connected the drive to an offline laptop. He copied the file twice, checked the hash values, verified the export time, then matched the file against the airport maintenance notice and the access door logs Teresa had photographed. He moved with quiet precision, explaining each step for Malcolm's recorder. No one in the kitchen interrupted him. Mrs. Whitaker stood by the stove, one hand gripping a dish towel. Naomi sat with her father's cloth wrapped around her wrist, watching the screen as if it might decide whether her brother would ever see her walk into that hospital room. The video began before Naomi appeared. The assisted medical screening lane sat strangely open, ropes adjusted, passengers redirected by officers who gave practiced little gestures toward another checkpoint. Pike stood beside the service door, checking his watch. Keller waited near the lane, not managing a crowd, not responding to a problem, just waiting. Then Naomi entered the frame, holding her folder and medical assistant's pass. Owen slowed the playback. Keller approached. The pass fell. He stepped into Naomi first. When he grabbed for her wrist, she turned out of the pull, and his own force carried him down. Naomi stepped back at once, hands lifted. The room went silent. Naomi did not cry. She did not smile. She simply stared at the woman on the screen, the woman everyone had been told to fear, and saw only someone trying not to become what they needed her to be. Then Owen advanced the footage. While phones rose and officers rushed toward Keller, a man in a dark airport jacket slipped through the service door with a charcoal gray titanium suitcase. No proper scan, no inspection, no pause. The corridor audio was rough, thinned by distance, machinery, and radio bleed from a maintenance panel. But Pike's voice cut through enough. Clear the lane before the courier crosses. A few seconds later, another phrase surfaced near the radio static. Did the phone leave? Malcolm stopped the video. His expression changed in a way Naomi had not seen before. Not relief, not victory, recognition. Now we have motive. He filed the emergency motion within the hour. This time it was not only about Naomi's travel. It demanded preservation of all security footage, service door logs, personnel schedules, medical courier records, device access reports, and internal communications tied to Pike's team. The second hearing was called that afternoon. Keller arrived in the same wheelchair, white brace secured under his jaw, but the performance felt thinner now, like makeup under harsh light. Julia Voss looked less polished than she had the day before. She had seen enough of Malcolm's filing to understand that someone had handed her a case built on missing pieces. When the judge allowed the S-12 footage to play, the courtroom seemed to stop breathing. The screen showed the lane being cleared. It showed Pike. It showed Keller moving first. It showed Naomi's restraint. It showed her hands raised. Then it showed the suitcase. No headline could talk over that. No expert could analyze away the missing beginning. Pike stood as if to leave before the clip ended. The judge looked over his glasses. "Deputy Chief Pike, sit down." The words landed hard. Keller's face lost color beneath the brace. Julia Voss stood slowly and said the state needed immediate time to review the integrity of the reports it had received. She did not apologize, but her voice no longer carried certainty. Before the hearing ended, a court clerk delivered a sealed notice confirming that a federal investigator had opened a preservation review tied to the service door logs. A technician from airport operations had come forward with preliminary logs pointing to 14 similar courier crossings over 9 months. Malcolm read the first page, then looked at Naomi. The judge approved emergency travel to Minneapolis under legal notice, effective immediately. Naomi rose. Keller stared at the table. Pike stared ahead. His calm finally emptied of power. Naomi looked at both men once. She said nothing. 2 days earlier, silence had been forced on her. Now it belonged to her. And in that silence, everyone in the room understood that the story had changed hands. Naomi Carter reached Riverbend Medical Center a little after midnight, still wearing the charcoal blazer from court, her hair pinned badly, her shoes carrying the dust of 2 airports and 1 courthouse. The halls smelled of antiseptic, warm plastic, and coffee that had been sitting too long in paper cups. She moved fast without running at first, because some part of her still remembered every place where moving too quickly had been used against her. Then she saw her mother rise from a chair outside the surgical conference room, and all restraint left her legs. Lorraine Carter stood with both hands pressed to her mouth, her face older than it had been 2 days before. Naomi reached her, and for a long moment there were no questions, no apology, no explanation large enough for what had been taken from them. There was only her mother's arms around her, and the terrible relief of arriving late, but not too late. "He kept asking," Lorraine whispered against her shoulder. Naomi closed her eyes. "I'm here now." The surgeon met her within minutes. He did not waste time on sympathy. Naomi appreciated that. Sympathy could come later if they earned later. In the conference room, she sat before the scans and lab results with her court papers still folded in her bag. And the doctor in her stepped forward because the sister in her could not be trusted with the whole room. She asked about the latest pressure changes, the medication response, the vascular imaging interval, the inflammatory markers that had shifted since the previous evening. The lead surgeon paused when she pointed to an older notation in Elijah's history, a detail from a past reaction that had been listed but not weighted. It did not change the danger. It changed the path through it. They adjusted the plan, moved away from the most aggressive option, and chose a narrower approach that gave Elijah a better chance without pretending the risk had disappeared. When Naomi signed the consent, her hand did not shake until the pen left the page. The surgery lasted 7 hours. Naomi and Lorraine sat in the hallway under lights that made everyone look tired and honest. Mrs. Whitaker called once. Malcolm sent only one message. "Pike is under federal review. Keller's statement is collapsing. Teresa is safe." Owen preserved everything. Naomi read the message, then set the phone face down. Justice could wait in the hall with them. Elijah could not. When the surgeon finally came out, his mask hung loose around his neck, and his eyes carried exhaustion but not defeat. He made it through, he said. The next 48 hours matter, but we stopped the worst of it. Lorraine bent forward like someone whose body had forgotten how to hold relief. Naomi covered her mouth, and the first sound she made was almost a laugh, almost a sob, and not enough of either to name. Later, in the ICU, Elijah lay pale and still, but the monitors no longer sounded like a countdown. Naomi touched his hand carefully. "I made it," she whispered. "And next time you want to scare us like this, choose something with cheaper airfare." His eyelids did not open, but one finger moved faintly under hers, and that was enough to make Lorraine cry into both hands. In the weeks that followed, Charlotte began cleaning what it had tried to hide. Pike was suspended and faced charges tied to evidence tampering, obstruction, and the illegal courier route. Keller had his security certification suspended and faced charges for false reporting and assault. The case against Naomi was dismissed fully, without conditions, without the neat little stain they had tried to place on her record. Julia Voss stood before cameras and admitted the state had received incomplete and misleading reports. It was not the apology Naomi deserved, but it was the first official sentence that did not make her smaller. Owen testified about the deleted video, the unauthorized login, the metadata, and the ghost traces that prove truth can survive even when someone thinks they have erased it. Teresa received labor protection after Malcolm pushed hard enough to make the airport afraid of being seen retaliating. When a reporter called her brave, she looked uncomfortable and said, "I cleaned up something that should never have been left dirty." 5 months later, Naomi and Elijah returned to Charlotte Douglas to fly west for a family visit. Elijah was thinner than before, moving slower, but he walked beside her without help. They passed the assisted medical screening lane, and the old air seemed to change around Naomi's ribs, the same polished floor, the same rope line, the same service door, now watched by 2 cameras and a federal seal on the frame. A new officer bent to pick up papers an older black woman had dropped near the lane. He read her assistance card carefully, handed it back with both hands, and said, "Take your time, Mom." Naomi stopped. Elijah looked at her. "You okay?" She watched the woman move forward without being rushed, without being doubted first. "I'm not over it," Naomi said, "but I'm through it." He took her hand. Just for a second, they kept walking. Behind them, the airport swallowed noise, and footsteps the way it always had. But something in that lane had changed. Not enough to fix every wrong. Enough to prove that truth, once carried by people willing to risk comfort for dignity, could leave a mark on the floor. If Naomi and Teresa's courage stayed with you, like this video and subscribe for more stories like this. Tell us which moment hit hardest and where you're watching from.
AI disclaimer: this fictional video was created with AI, assist writing and production, tool for dramatic and educational purpose. All name, character, place, and events are fictional, and any recent plan to real people or organization is coincidental. The purpose of this story is to remind viewers to value fairness, human dignity, and respect, and to show how fear, fraud, judgment, and abuse of authority can harm innocent people when truth is ignored.